We are looking at chapter 2 programming methodology. This is of unit 2. We are going to see the need for good programs and we'll try to understand how we can solve problems using different ways and also the problem solving methodology. And then we'll try to understand the type of errors which we normally encounter while we write programs. So let me tell you that programming or making a computer program is two things. First is learning and then IQ, means logic. So you need to have these two in proper proportion so that you can be a good programmer or you can be good in computer science. First of all, you need to understand the problem well. You need to understand that what exactly is asked, and being a computer science background, you need to understand that you have to solve it in a logical manner. For example, there are two methods of learning how to drive. First, you can go to the market and you can buy a book, and the second is you can get inside the car, start driving it, have a guide who can guide you. This method is far better than just reading. The same logic is for computer programming, because the computer programming is the process of first writing, then testing your program, troubleshooting, debugging if any bugs are there, removing the bugs, and then afterwards, because your program is under work or it is being used, you have to maintain it, right? So the basic idea of an effective program is that you are given certain input, you produce the right output. For that you need a systematic approach. So there are two things in this systematic approach. First is your program structure and your program representation. What is your program structure? See, there are two things. First, what you can do, first you can make all these small modules or small parts, and then you can combine them. Say you can combine them. The other method is you take the main program, you divide it. So now there are two ways to implement the program structure. First is your top down, second is your bottom up. And these are this bottom up popular approaches are like this only. You have to make your program readable and understandable to you after some time, to the people who are going to maintain your program. So what is a good program? First is it should be faster and it should provide correct response and with all the memory constraints. See, you have a program P1. It produces the result. I'm just taking some example, say 2 minutes. You have a program P2 or somebody has written program P2. It takes 3 minutes. You tell me which program is better. Of course, the program with the lesser time is better. Of course, we assume that they correct right result. Now I will add something here. This program of 2 minutes takes 10 GB memory. 3 minutes take only 500 MB. Which would you prefer? You will prefer the second one. So the memory constraint, all the system resources, all the computer resources you have to see while you're making a programming language. So there are certain guidelines of programming languages that need to be followed when you want to write a successful program. So let us see some good programming habits. Certain organizations are there like ISOs, the IEEEs. They have formulated various guidelines and people are agreeing to it. So let us see. First is clarity and simplicity of expression. What it means is, whatever you write has to give a clear meaning. It should not be ambiguous. You will understand, the computer can understand. What about others? What about those who are going to maintain? Or if you are writing some ambiguous thing, then the program is going to fail sooner or later. So what you have to do is, see, there are certain things. These are called your operands. This star is operator. So if somebody told you that I want x to the power 6, what you can do, the first method is that you multiply x 6 times. The other method is you take the function power function x comma 6. Actually in C, C++ you will get this POW power function. So this function, which is the library functions are those functions which are given by the programming language by themselves. These are library functions, and user defined functions are those functions which you make for yourself to solve certain purpose. So library functions you can use. The second thing is the simplicity, to maintain the clarity of expression. See, this is your this is actually whole expression, but this is one part, this is your second part. So why not to do one thing? Make it x1, make it x2, x1, x2, and then say x is equal to x1 minus x2. So this will be better to understand, to maintain, and this will be simpler also. Don't try to put unnecessary tricks. You may be very good at programming, but just understand that your program is not limited to yourself. It will go around. Your bosses will see, your teacher will see, your friends will see, and the people who are going to maintain it is going to see. So just avoid program tricks. Make it as simple as possible. Just follow KISS principle. Keep it simple. S is for, it's a wrong word, but I should speak. Keep it simple, stupid. This is a principle which is given for various things, and this is applicable for programming also. Just make it simple. Then use of proper names for identifiers. See, if you have to find a simple interest and you say you have named it as ABSI, what does it signify? It doesn't. But if I write simple underscore interest, though I took more time in writing this, but in later on, while I'm debugging it, while I'm maintaining it, simple interest will be the best name, because anybody who understands computer, English, or little bit about these things, he will understand, okay, something is going on with this simple interest. So the identifiers, to make an identifier are those variables that you are going to use to fetch data, to keep data, to store data, and to manipulate data. So the identifiers, you can use capital A to capital Z, small a to small z, and 0 to 9. You cannot start with a number, but you can start with underscore. But this underscore is normally, trivially, it is used for system calls or system commands. So let us use this kind of approach. Now you want to have an area of a square. Area of a square is what? This is a square. Now area of square is what? Side into side. Side into side. So make the name of this variable as side and keep the variable name of area as area. Area is equal to side into side. Now this gives you a meaningful name for this variable and also the function. You have to use proper names for the constant. You are using pi for 3.14. How about pi const if you write like this? This will not convey any meaning. Pi will suffice. Don't use same name, because custom and customer, because the programs are not 1 or 2 lines. They can be of hundreds of lines in the program. So while you are going through that program or somebody else is going through program, he will see customer equivalent. So just change the name properly. Don't give similar name. And do not use one letter identifier. For example, simple interest you take S, compound interest you take C. No, this will not give you any meaning, and also the identifiers are vague. This S can correspond to any of the various values or inputs that program is going to take. What are comments? See, as far as compiler is concerned, comment will be placed in dustbin or a recycle bin, right? Comments has no meaning as far as compiler is concerned, because comments compiler are going to just ignore. But let me tell you, for you, comments are the most important thing. if you are writing a program of simple interest, you start with this. This is for single line, this is for multiple line. You just write, this is a program for simple interest. Okay. Now when you have written this, the program which is following all the instructions, anybody could understand this is a program of simple interest. So just a line has made a huge difference. So these comments are very important. These comments are for your purpose, for others' purpose also, and for a better understanding and to debug also. This is, if you talk about Python, then these are the way you give the comment, and a one line comment you give by hash. For example, if you want to write a program to print all the numbers from 1 to 100 using a while loop in Python, you start with a equal to 1 while a is less than 100, and you place a comment hash while statement and print a plus 1. So this what you have written is a comment. This is making this worthwhile. And you can also do one thing, make a hash and write here, this is a program to print all the numbers from 1 to 100. If you write this here, this program will, you have actually enhanced the beauty of the program as far as the understanding is concerned, the later understanding is concerned, and debugging is concerned. Indentation. See, this code is very clean. If construct, if a is greater than b, then you print a is big. This is your block 1. If a is less than b, you go for this block. So see, indentation uses these white spaces. White spaces are those which you type in the keyboard and you are not able to see, like the tab, like the space, like the enter. And these are all the constituents of the indentation. So indentation is very important. How about I write if a greater than b and I place print line here, print this line here, and then else here and this line here. So this will not, okay, the program is going to run, but the meaning, but the understanding, how about this? Once you are stuck in some problem or some compiler error comes, how we are going to get rid of it? You have to make your indentation as, I should say, as beautiful as possible. If you see your program beautiful, then the program will be beautiful as far as the other concerned good programming practices are concerned. Don't write everything in one line. Use multiple line. Use these white spaces, because after all the compiler is going to get rid of these white spaces by itself. You don't have to worry about that. What are the characteristics of good programming? Now, every microprocessor, your system or any system, uses some instruction set. So it becomes very important what instructions you provide to it. You write in high level language. That high level language will be converted into your assembly language. This assembly language is understood by these are actually the instruction set. So this will be converted into machine language. So this whole criteria is going on. You are not just writing in C, C++, Java. You are actually making a machine language. You are writing in machine language. So the quality of program is totally dependent upon what you write. What is the desired input? What are you writing? Is it giving a correct output? Or you are just writing 10 lines, I am writing 5 lines, mine is better. You have put in so much effort, but my effort, less line and good effort. Okay. So there are certain characteristics which we need to follow to make a good program. First is flexibility. See, you have written a program. If I say just change the program, I don't like this program, you will be saying I put so much effort in making this program and you are saying me to change the program. No, you should be saying, okay sir, I am going to change the program. No problem with that. I have made my program so flexible that I can change it anytime. Just take an example of CAD, computer aided design. This came for mechanical people. Okay, this software has now been propagated and being used and immensely used for engineering, drafting, printing circuit board, layout design, architecture design, technical drawing, industrial art. Why? Because this program is so flexible, this is so good that even the people who are not in that mechanical department, they are using it. Even the remote sensing, GIS, civil people are using it. So you have to make that program so that you can update it. Change is the only thing which never changes. So you have to be prepared for the change. Make your program flexible. User friendly. See, I have made a very good program, but my user don't know how to. For example, when one version of Windows came, people were not able to understand how to switch off the computer. They were not even finding the off button on the screen. So what is the use of making such a humongous program if your user is not even finding the off or put your system off? So best make it as user friendly. Everything should be clean. Everything should be very obvious, intuitive. Means if something comes up, the software or the program should say or should give a proper message that your input is wrong, or you must do this, you must do that. It should be self-propagating or flowing. If your user loves it, then your program is good. If you have made a very, very good effort but the user friendliness is not there, then your software or program is of no use. Portability. There are Windows system. There are Mac systems. There are say Linux, not system but operating system, and say this is working on say Intel Pentium, or this is working on Xeon, this is working on some AMD processor, some processor, I'm just taking random. Now your program, you have checked it very well for Windows, you have put in so much effort in testing, but your program is not going to work on a Mac or Linux. So what is the use if your program is not portable, unless and until you have been set properly that it should only work on Windows? Otherwise, the portability is very important, because the user or the technology is changing so fast, so rapid, that things are changing at very huge or fast or exponential pace. So you have to catch up with that. For that, you have to make your program work on each and every configuration. Reliability is, you have been given a task of making a Maggi, but you have made a program of making a noodle. Maggi is a specialized noodle. You have to make a program for Maggi only. This may work for noodle, this may not work for noodle. And the second thing is, you have given a wrong input. The program is not giving anything, or it is crashing. It is not showing any graceful degradation. That means your program is not reliable. It can collapse anytime, it can stop anytime, it is not giving any error messages, and what you have made is not what you have been asked for. Your program will be unreliable, so make it reliable. Self-documenting code. If you have written your variables, methods, function, and you have given a very suitable name, then the reader will understand what is going on. Your program has to be clear, self-sufficient, and self-expressive. This is self-documenting code. Then we have problem-solving process. In a real life also, what happens? Your father says something, okay, do this. You understand that problem. Then in the back of the mind, you devise a problem. Then you execute the problem. Then you evaluate. He said, bring biscuit. Bring biscuit for us. Or cookies. You went to the market, you bought the biscuit. But you didn't ask your father what kind of biscuit you want. You want a salty biscuit, you want a sweet biscuit, you want a pista biscuit. What do you want exactly? So you have not understood the problem. The basic thing is to understand the problem, and on the basis of understanding, if you understood it well, then only you are able to devise a plan. Then you can execute the plan. And this is not over. You can WhatsApp your father. You can give your father a message that I am buying this, or you can send the photo. Sir, is this okay? Is this correct? Your father will say, okay, this is correct. So you have evaluated. So this goes with programming also. Understanding the problem is very important. If you don't understand, you will not be able to give the correct output. This is obvious. So the input, what you are being provided and you are providing the output, say you are being given 2 plus 3 and you are doing 2 into 3. This will not be okay. So you have to understand the problem. You have to ask the user, you have to ask the teacher, sir, exactly what do you want me to do? If you didn't understand, ask them again and again so that you come up with a proper solution. So you have to understand the situation very well. Then you have to devise a plan. Once you have understood the problem, you need to see that how I can go about it. There are various these data structures available. There are various things which are in computer science that you can use. You can use tree implementation. You can use graph implementation. So there are so many things. And devising a plan means you have to write the DFDs, data flow diagrams. You have to write the flow charts. You have to write the algorithms. You have to make a UML diagram. All this you can do. I'm not saying these are advanced computer science stuff, but I'm just saying that you have to do all these things to make your plan well organized. And on the basis of this, what you have made, say you have made a flow chart, you have to execute the plan, stick to the plan exactly what you have thought of, and it is being verified. So it should be revised by someone, yourself or your superior. Then you have to evaluate. Once you have got the product, you have made the proper solution, it needs to be tested. It needs to be subjected to various inputs, different level of inputs, different conditions, situations, so that you evaluate what you have made is correct. In this, we'll see the problem solving methodology. So we are dealing with the computer science, the programming, and the software development life cycle. So whenever we have certain problem or the task to do, there has to be some systematic method to solve this problem. And if you really want to solve a problem, this systematic method has certain clear phases. Clear phases, or we call it as software development life cycle. So there are certain steps how to solve a particular problem. Even if you are making a small program or you are making a large software, and these are all being developed in course of development of the softwares and the programming. So the first one is the problem definition, the second is problem analysis, design of the problem, then the coding, then program testing and debugging, documentation, and program maintenance. We'll discuss these all in detail, but before we go ahead, these are the phases, different phases of the SDLC, that is software development life cycle. And there are so many models available. You have waterfall model, you have spiral model, you have agile model. So there are so many models, and the software or the program which you are going to make, it decides which model you are going to take. First is problem definition and specification. Means what are you doing? You are doing something for the humankind. Means some user come to you, he says I want to automate the banking services, right? So you have to automate his banking services. Now he has certain problem. He don't want to use the registers. He don't want to waste the paper. He want to automate it. He want to curtail the cost. Everything he needs to do. For that he has some problem. So the best thing or the first step is to understand the problem. The description, what he has given, what problem he has posed. If you are not able to understand that, the problem specification or definition cannot be done. Means first, just understand that if you are being provided with a question like find the average of 5 numbers, what you're going to ask yourself, you have to ask first of all, what does average mean exactly to me, and how to calculate average value. Means if you want to make a banking services software, you have to go to the bank, means banking arena. You have to understand what banking is all about, because you are going to make software of that, and understand what his problem is. Means if he is talking about credit, you cannot think of that maybe the credit and debit are same. These are two entirely different things. The transactions, the fund transfers, there are so many things which he would want. So the questions he is posing, or the customer or user or your teacher is posing in front of you, has to be very precise. It has to be understood very precise. So you ought to write whatever is being posed in front of you in the form of laid down or specifications. So specifications are a very precise definition of what the program is going to do. He has given you 2 plus 3. You understood, okay, 2 numbers has to be given. I added it. Now you just made this program, but when you came back, or when you went back to him, he said, okay, he entered 2.3 and 3.6. You said, I didn't cater this. I didn't do these decimal digits. So you have to ask and understand that what kind of problem he is posing. So it must include the input, the output, that what data must be included as input and in which form, like this, and the output, that is what data must the program would produce and in which form, in which order. So at the end of this problem definition step, you should have a list of specification. In computer science, we call it as SRS, software requirement specification, and this needs to be signed by the customer and the user, the developer. And if at all you are dealing with your teacher or your guide in your school or college, then your guide or teacher and you have to understand, you have to come to a common consensus. Okay, you have told me exactly what I understood. Is it right? Yes, you are right. Then the problem analysis. See, a problem can be of one line. I want this. This problem of one line can be divided into certain fragments. So you have to divide this into manageable parts. Say banking solution. So you have to divide it into fund transfer. You have to divide it into the showing of the summary of the account. Then the, say, profile management. Say some PPF or GPF or some mutual funds. All these things have to be divided, and these sub problems are easier to understand, easier to solve, and they can be combined together to form a final component. So each subprogram may also be divided into further fragments until you reach that fragment where you cannot divide. So for that you use the concept of modular programming. What is modular programming? When you are being provided certain tasks, is if you are able to divide it into clear fragments, clear functions, clear modules, clear procedures. Now these procedures, they work together, or they will solve certain purpose, and the main program would call, if this main program wants to do the fund transfer, he'll go to this fund transfer module. If the main program wants to do some mutual fund thing, it will go to this module. Now this module is nothing but the function or set of functions are module, and these modules are by themselves, means this mutual fund module will only contain the content of mutual fund, the code of the idea of mutual fund. So this is the cohesiveness of this module, and this is the fund transfer. So fund transfer is not at all dependent, maybe somewhat dependent, but it has nothing to do with the mutual fund. There has to be lowest coupling. They are not coupled, so there has to be a low coupling and there has to be high cohesiveness. The work which is given to fund transfer, the fund transfer should do it. Mutual fund should not do the fund transfer. Okay, so the low coupling and the high cohesiveness is the key idea. There are two approaches, top down and bottom up. What we do in top down design? In top down design, what we do, first we talk about, or we see the main module. Then this main module is going to be divided, or it will dictate these submodules, and then this will again be divided, and it will divide it till you reach, so that you cannot further subdivide it. So these are the different functionalities or modules or functions or procedure which are doing certain tasks, and they in combined way they are going to solve this purpose, and main program is the key, or the main is the key. How about bottom up? See, if you are given already or you already have certain tasks which can be done, you've already done in your previous program, class or project. So when you have already done, you can just combine it, or you can just directly use it. So when some problem is posed in front of you, you can use this. You can use the library modules of the programming language. You can use some say already built Java Beans program which is already there. You don't have to make calendar again and again. Calendar is already being made, so you can just directly use it. Now you can combine these and make a module. You can combine this, make a module, and then this can be combined. So we start with the simple modules. The design and structure is very small, means very simple. Then in the course of the development, you go up and then you make a final bottom up design. Then how to design the problem? Say once you have made the SRS, that is software requirement specification, has been made, or there is an agreement between you and the person who has given you the task. Once this is done, now the second thing was of course the proper bifurcation or fragmentation, that is called the analysis. The next important thing comes is the designing, where we create the design document and designing. So you have to see what data structure you can use. Either you have to use an array, how much length should it be. You can use the say graph or linked list. So linked list, any data structure you can use, what will be the best for that. And in right now, if talked in the simple terms, you can make an algorithm. So algorithm is what? Algorithm is a set of instructions that describe a method for solving a problem, and it is a mix of your computer code and English language. That is why it is called as a pseudocode. You can also write flowchart, means you can represent the problem solving in diagrammatic manner. You can use the start and end like this. You can use the processing like this. You can take input output in this kind of symbol or figure, or you can make decisions like this. So this is a diagrammatic view. So algorithm design are the way of designing the problem. You can use structure chart, you can use UML, unified modeling language, you can use DFD, data flow design. So there are so many things available. Then comes the coding. Now what the naive or the beginners understand, that the software development is just coding. It's not that. Coding is just 20% of 100% of the work. So coding is actually putting what you have designed in terms of language, computer language, high level language. Since computer understand only zeros and ones or machine language, you will write high level language. There are compilers available for C, C++, Java, Python, any language you take, and this will be converted into your machine language. Now here you actually write the code. Then once you have written the code, there is no guarantee that the code is correct. So you have to check and verify it. You have to test it. You have to do some black box testing, some white box testing. There are so many testings which are available depending upon the task you are being given. Means if you are designing a website, you have to do the load testing, the stress testing, the connection testing, or there are so many testings, there are hundreds of testing. It depends on what exactly the task is being given to you. Once you have tested, there are certain bugs which will come up. There are some certain problems that will come up. You are giving certain data, sample data, so the result will come and you will understand, okay, there is some problem. Now you have to remove that problem. So finding and correcting the errors is debugging. So what kind of problems or errors can be when you compile a program, that is when you use a compiler, say you are using a C++ compiler, it will give you certain result. And after the result is correct, means all the errors you have removed, then also you will get some error. So there are certain errors: syntax error, logical error, runtime error. What is the syntax error? Every programming language, be it the C, C++, Java, Python, or any language you choose, there are certain regulations, rules and regulations for that language. That is, In C, C++, Java, you have to end each and every instruction by a semicolon, right? So if you don't give this semicolon, there will be a problem. There will be a compiler error. Compiler says, I have given you certain rules and regulations. This programming language has given you certain rules. You have to follow that. You have to abide that, right? At that moment, if you compile and you have certain problem, the compiler will issue some errors. Like this program, a equal to 0 while a is less than 10, a is equal to a plus 1, print a. Now what is the problem? Problem is in this line. This programming in Python says that you should have a colon here. This should end with a colon. So this will flash a syntax error, right? This is a colon you want, and there is no colon. So programming language wants this colon. This is kind of a syntax error. Then the logical error. What is this logical error? There are certain errors in the logic. Means once the compiler will complete its work, means you have removed the compilation error, the rules and regulations you have followed, but there are certain logical errors that you might have made. Like in this program, a is equal to 100, while a less than 10, a is equal to a plus 1, print a. What would you assume, or what do you think the error would be? See, a is 100, so this is 100. 100 is less than 10. 100 will never be less than 10. So this while loop is never going to execute. So this is a logical error. Means the logic which you have put in the program will give you incorrect and unexpected result. There will be some runtime error. There will be some wrong output. There will be some crashes going on. So this is just because you have done something logically wrong, and these are hidden in source code and very difficult to find out. This is not just a syntax problem. This is actually the logic or the IQ or the effort the programmer or the developer has made. So you have to be very cautious about that. The next thing is runtime error. Now there is an example, say a equal to 10, b equal to 0, print a by b. So what a by b will be? A is 10, b will be 0. And we understand in the computer science background is all mathematics. So 10 by 0, can you find 10 by 0? It will give you no result or unexpected result. So this is illogical. Division by 0 is illogical. This kind of error, they are called as runtime error. Now if you have taken an array, say array and 10, and you are trying to read the 21st value of this array, since the area or the memory assigned is only for 10 places, you are trying to access 21th, which is not there. So this will be an error, array out of bound error. So these are all the runtime errors. Okay. If there is a file in a hard disk, there is no file in the hard disk, you want to get the file from the hard disk, you will not get it. So there will be a runtime error. Then the final is documentation. See, documentation, as I said, SDLC, software development life cycle, has various phases. So in every phase there are documents like the SRS, like the design document, the testing, test plan, like this. So this documentation, these are very important, because this documentation, how you are going to know what is the design? If there is flaw in the design, the coding will not be correct. If there is flaw in the SRS, the design will be not correct. So these are all the problems that will only be understood when the documentation is done properly. See, you have created a version, say 1.0. You are coming up with a version of software that is 1.1 or 1.2. Now this version control has to be there. How you are going to get this? You ought to have a document of 1.0. Then only you can go to 1.1. And the people or the person who are going to maintain your software after that has been delivered and it is being used, then who is going to take, from where they are going to take the context, from where they are going to see what has been done. For that, documentation is very important. Then the program maintenance. Finally, see, there is one thing which is change, and change is the only thing which never change. So change is eternal. When you have made a software, given it to somebody, a program you have given it to somebody, it is going to change. There is a lifespan of a software, and in that software or in that lifespan, you will be post or posed with certain things you need to change. For example, the program maintenance, it can be of various types, like the preventive maintenance, the corrective maintenance, the adaptive maintenance. So there are so many maintenance. The maintenance activity will include, first you have to find and eliminate errors which were previously undetected while you were testing. So while you were testing, you couldn't find the error. Now after the user have started using, then you see that there are certain errors. So you have to find and eliminate. This is program maintenance. What happens? Certain performance wise your software is not being accepted well, or certain government regulations has come. Okay, now the GST has been implemented, so you have to change the software. The user is not going to change. You have to change the code. Some new software, new operating system, new application has come. You have to make the program or software suitable for that. That is program maintenance. Now certain things have come up. The user wants certain interface to be changed, new capabilities to be added. These are all program maintenance, and apart from this, updating of documentation is also the program maintenance activity. So maintenance is a very important part of life cycle. It is important because the documentation, because when any change is there, the documentation, either the internal documentation which is written in the code, external documentation like the SRS, I discussed the design document, all these. So internal as well as external documentation has to be done very carefully and very religiously, so that maintenance, like the program development steps, the design document, the program code and test formation information is available, and the program can be, or software can be maintained easily. So this is all about this chapter. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.